I saw something on Twitter last night and this guy said he was bored, so he swapped all the wrappers on the Christmas chocolates and his wife got a Snickers in a twist. It's just another way of muddying the waters for EVs and trying to get out of EV owners paying what they should do when they should do. It's so funny, the pathetic stories that are coming out about this 3p EVD charge. It's unbelievable. They're doing their best to try and get the Chancellor to U-turn and block this because they know it's going to kill sales. It will absolutely decimate sales. It shouldn't do, because as we hear, they're so cheap to charge, aren't they, at home? But the point is, the people who are buying them is for business use. They're not getting to charge at home all the time. The difference between a petrol and an EV in economy and what you save when you're driving down the motorway all day is negligible. In fact, it's worse. And again, when you take depreciation into account, an EV's worse than a petrol. The desperation, it's just, it's bleeding out of them, the lot of them, all these stories. But do you know what? The worst one, the funniest one I've seen is the BVRLA. I keep going on about them. I can't believe them. I can't believe the stories that they're putting out. If these people believe the stories they're putting out, they shouldn't be doing the job they're doing. They shouldn't be advising people. They shouldn't be talking to the government. The BVRLA were at Downing Street last week. If they come out with shit like this to other people who are just as stupid as they are, what if the government do take their word for it? Now bear with me with this. And then also, if you would, watch the next video, which is actually about ICE cars, and did happen to me, and is happening all the time. Electric car tax will lead to wave of mileage fraud, Reeves warned. Why would that be, do you think? They're going to be charged 3p a mile. Okay. This story is by James Titcombe, a more aptly named reporter. Having said that, he's just reported it. Perhaps I'm being too hard on him. Perhaps he's just reporting it, and he's taking notes verbatim off this imbecile at the BVRLA, and never thought to ask certain questions, because that's what happens if you get one person who doesn't know what they're talking about telling somebody else who doesn't know what they're talking about. You know, there's a chance if you don't know what you're talking about, you might think the other person does. So if you're just a reporter and you know nothing about cars, you'd assume that, who is he from the BVRLA? Toby Poston, again. So Toby Poston from the BVRLA, who again is telling everybody how much money they're going to save on EVs, whilst telling the government that they need to put subsidies on used cars. The worst thing that could ever happen to used cars is a subsidy on used cars, because you put a subsidy on electric cars, the people who've got ICE cars then have to make them cheaper. So for the few that you get a subsidy on, it has a knock-on effect right throughout the trade, and it has a knock-on effect of other EVs that haven't just come up for sale by a leasing company who wants bailing out. You private people that bought one, you will get hit right in the pocket. And do you know what else? You're going to get hit in the pocket with your own money, your own 3p per mile you're paying, your own tax, income tax that you're paying, that is going to pay somebody else to buy a new EV with a load of money off, which then makes your vehicle depreciate. It couldn't be any more ill-conceived than this. This is what happens when you get stupid people who haven't got a clue, like say for instance somebody advising the motor trade who, well, used to have something to do with cycling, and they now think that they're qualified to tell the motor trade and the manufacturers what they should be doing with EVs. Just listen to this, honestly. I looked at it and I laughed. I just laughed. I just thought how pathetic somebody in charge of the BVRLA hasn't got a clue what's going on. No idea whatsoever. But the thing is, he's opened a can of worms now, and I'm glad he's opened it, because there's no putting the lid back on the can. This happens, this goes on, this happens all the time now, not because there's a new tax coming in. As I say, watch my vlog afterwards. True story, absolutely true, as I'm sitting here. And also, it was from one of the big players of the motor trade, one of the big boys. They couldn't give a shit. They couldn't give a shit that a vehicle had been clocked. They didn't care less. That's your big boys in the motor trade. I'm one guy. I care. Whether you think so or not, I care. Labour is planning to ban sales of petrol and diesel cars by 2030, but the pay-per-mile tax could cut EV sales by 440,000 cars. Rachel Reeves has been warned that her pay-per-mile electric car tax will lead to a surge in mileage fraud from motorists tampering with their odometers. Honestly, this is ridiculous. I cannot think of anything so stupid in my whole life. And stay with me till the end of the video, because if I've not put a spoiler alert at the beginning, you'll want to know this. Honestly, brain dead. I cannot believe that this guy has openly said this to a newspaper. I can't believe the stupidity. The 3p per mile charge, which will come into force in 2028, will be based on annual odometer readings during MOTs, meaning electric vehicle EV owners could try to underpay by clocking their vehicle to wind back mileage. Well, first thing, when you buy a new EV, 3 years, isn't it, before you have to have it MOT'd. Now, what I do suggest is they have to have a battery health check every 12 months. That's the first thing, because that would be a good thing, a battery health check every 12 months, maybe even every 6 months. That would be a great thing. And then also on the MOTs after that. So at least we might catch some that are going around with damaged batteries that are just ready to explode. And that way we can keep a check on the mileage. The British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association, BVRLA, the trade body for car hire and leasing companies, said the policy could lead to a wave of fraud. Policy could lead to a wave of fraud. Charging 3p a mile could lead to a wave of fraud. Toby Poston, who from what I can gather worked at the BBC and then came to the BVRLA. You see, to me that's like an accountant running a car dealership. I've seen it firsthand. They don't know what they're doing. They know figures, facts. They don't know customers. They don't know deals. They don't know cars. They don't know traders. They know nothing. Perhaps I'm being a bit harsh on some. Toby Poston, the BVRLA chief executive, said, the government's plan for a new pay-per-mile EVED, EV excise duty tax from 2028 is the wrong policy at the wrong time. In addition to the massive administrative and operational headaches for EV fleets, it creates an incentive for people to tamper with their mileages. Delivering this regime in its current form risks fueling a wave of fraudulent activity that would see the Treasury recoup less, while simultaneously eroding confidence in the fragile used EV market. Fragile used... No, Toby! Toby, mate, I'd have thought you knew. You can save £1,500 a year if you're a private by buying an EV. You know it's not true, don't you? You know EV sales are on a knife edge. Well, actually, they're not on a knife edge. They're trying to get to the top of the knife edge. Because at the moment, the knife edge is there and EV sales are here. Because they're not as cheap to run as you say they are. In fact, mostly it's cheaper to run an ICE car because of the depreciation on EVs. They're being subsidised to get them out into the market by leasing companies. Leasing companies are losing hundreds of millions of pounds because they're putting EVs out on lease that they're not making money on. They're losing money. It's costing them to put an EV out on a lease for 3 years. Costing them money. The government has conceded that rates of odometer tampering could rise as a result of the tax. Bollocks. The government are just as stupid as the BVRLA. Mileage readings will be based on in-vehicle odometers, which are simple to read but can be subject to tampering. It's said in a consultation paper. You know nothing. You know nothing at all. It's the blind leading the blind. Or in this case, Dumb and Dumber. Estimates have suggested that around 2.3% of UK vehicles may show signs of clocking. And though this practice is uncommon, not as uncommon as you think, mate, the government recognises that the introduction of VED may increase the likelihood of motorists choosing to clock their vehicles or allowing the odometer to be inoperative. Odometer tampering in itself is not against the law, only becoming a criminal offence when owners seek to sell their car. What about clocking it when it's not your car, when it's on a lease? What about then? Is it a criminal offence then? In 2021, the government said it planned to introduce a new criminal offence for tampering, but the plans were put on hold after a backlash from classic car owners and motorcycle groups, which warned that it would prevent all vehicle modification. But you see, now we're not talking about them, are we? We're talking about EVs. No classic EVs, are they? 10-year-old, I suppose. Not classics. All with digital speedos. No cables that you could pull out. No cables that you could disconnect from the gearbox. No cables that you could disconnect from the gearbox, go underneath with a Black & Decker, sit there and wind your clock back. No clocks that you could take out and lever them back with a screwdriver. You can't do that, can you? So what are they talking about? We know when classics come in from. Budget documents suggest that new penalties may be introduced for lying when submitting mileages under the paper mile scheme. The government is considering further options to mitigate against odometer tampering and intends to engage with manufacturers, the leasing industry and insurance to minimise fraud, the document said. The government will take necessary legislative, regulatory and technical steps to widen existing law and strengthen enforcement. Easy for me to say. The EV paper mile tax is being introduced to address a shortfall in fuel duty, which is not paid by EV owners. It will be introduced in 2028 and paid alongside vehicle tax, with mileages checked when a car has its MOT. Again, 3 years. Should have the battery checked. Drivers of new EVs will have to arrange separate checks in the car's first 3 years, when they're not subject to MOTs, and as we all know, EVs don't need servicing. Like hell. So, what they're going to do? The announcement of the tax, combined with fuel duty being frozen for the 16th successive year, has led to warnings that it could put the government's EV targets at risk. Labour is planning to ban all sales of petrol and diesel cars by 2030, with hybrids banned from 2035. However, the Office for Budget Responsibility said that paper mile tax would cut EV sales by 440,000. It said this would be mostly offset by other EV-friendly policies in the budget, which would boost sales by 320,000. The Department for Transport was contacted for comment. Let me comment on their behalf. Do you know how they calculate a lease? Do you know how you get a price for a lease? Let's just go through it and see if you can follow along where the BVRLA and the government can't. Me, I'm just a simple car salesman. But you see, I don't know anything about f***ing a country up, so I couldn't be an MP. I know a lot about cars, so I couldn't work for the BVRLA because it would see that one of the stipulations about working for the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association is that you know nothing about cars. And then when the chief executive was just about to put out a statement and make a fool of himself in front of all the readers of, was it the Telegraph? You know, like the Emperor's New Clothes? Toby, have you got a minute? You know, like you're the chief executive of the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association. Have you ever thought about learning how they calculate leases? How they arrive at a rental for the customer? Because I think, you know, you've been here like 17 years. I think it's possibly about time you learned. Because this statement makes you look like a pillock. In all honesty, you look stupid, you look ridiculous. And you know what? This is probably worse than all the other stuff you've said in the past, and that was bad. Okay, let's put my glasses on for this. So we want to get ourselves a lease or a PCP, right? Let's Autotrader have a company called Vanarama, and in fact we'll just see, is that here? Yeah, this is the document that the BVRLA put their name to. What about running costs? Save up to £1,500 a year on electric cars. Autotrader there, they've put their name to it. The SMMT, yeah, the Office of Zero Emissions, and the BVRLA, save up to £1,500 a year. What about running costs? Running costs include fuel maintenance and insurance, but not the most important, depreciation, obviously. Otherwise, there's no way you'd save £1,500 a year, because a dealer couldn't do it. It's impossible. You just can't do it. And that's them buying at trade and having kind of a margin coming down. And like retailing at the end of 12 months, you couldn't save £1,500 a year, even if you were the best dealer in the world. So that's what we in the trade call bullshit. One of the names there, Autotrader. Autotrader have their own leasing company. So let's have a look at Autotrader. We'll go to Autotrader. Car leasing, our best deals, electric deals. So we'll go to electric deals. We'll go there. I'd have a Renault 5. Be ideal for me. Perfect. Love them. Always like Renault 5s. Especially the Gordini, or that one that Fatima, what was she called in Never Say Never? The one that she had. Incidentally, I think I saw Fatima years ago in the south of France. Was it Fatima Blush? So here we go. So this one, we'll take the first one I like. Let's just have a look at it. You see there it says initial deposit £2,407, and it also says from £201 per month, including VAT, because it's a private, so it's a PCP then for a private person, not plus VAT. for a company. £2,407 initial payment, 48 months contract, 6,000 miles per year. We'll click on that. So here we go. 6,000 miles per year. 4 years. 12 months up front, which is how they get it to £200. You see, what they've started doing now, it used to be like 3 months. But now, to make the payments look attractive, they put 12 months up front. You see there, if I knock it to like 3 months up front, it goes up to £241. So that's another £41. Not quite sounding so attractive now, is it? But we'll go back to 12 months. 6,000 miles a year. 4 years, 4 sixes, 24,000 miles a year. So 4 years old, 24,000 miles. 6,000 miles is not average mileage. Nowhere near. It's probably half. In 4 years, when it comes back, what happens if it's got more than 24,000 miles on? Anybody? Did you say, oh, you know, you've done 30,000 mile, it's okay. It's not worth as much to us now because we did all our calculations on 24,000 miles. You've done 30,000. It's okay. Don't worry about it. No, because in the contract, there is an excess mileage charge, a price per mile over and above your 24,000 miles. Okay, now unfortunately on here, which I'm very disappointed about, because Autotrader have this big thing about dealers being transparent and putting all examples on, and you know, I couldn't actually see view all features and spec. I would have thought they'd perhaps need to be, here we go, small print there, I can hardly read it. So there's nothing there on that. That's one car I'm looking at. Learn more about how it works. Learn more about how it works. Here's what happens. Want to know more? Read our full terms and conditions. Vanarama T's and C's. Does it say anything there about mileage? No. Business customer, events, lease agreement, leasing company, manufacturer, value added tax, website, you or services, the goods, all diesel vehicles, the order, lease agreement, anything there? Still can't see anything. Applications, variations, collection and delivery, delivery of goods, you are responsible for the goods. So here we go. Number 9, excess mileage. So right down at the bottom, number 9, excess mileage and fair wear and tear. That's 9. 9.1, your lease agreement will set out any excess mileage charge and provisions in relation to fair wear and tear. Unfortunately, I've looked on the actual quote for the vehicle and I can't see, it may be there, but I can't see it. And it doesn't tell me how many pence per mile I have to pay if I go over and above the 24,000. But I found this other page. Vanarama, an Autotrader company. Excess mileage charges explained. Now I won't go through all that again, but how do you pick a perfect mileage? Standard leasing deals include mileages ranging from 10,000 to 30,000 per annum. Ultimately, the flexibility offered is enormous, and with this available, do you really think you would exceed this with the right preparation and guidance? A friend of mine leased a car through work, and when she finished the lease, she wanted to buy the vehicle. And I think the lease was for 30,000 miles for 3 years, and she'd done way less. COVID and all sorts of stuff like that. She asked me how much I thought it was worth, and I looked at it and I gave her a valuation, And I also gave her a valuation on how much the vehicle would be worth in that condition if it had done 30,000 miles, which she'd paid for. Now, guess what the leasing company said? We can't sell it you, but you can get a price off BCA. They'll be able to sell it you. Guess what BCA wanted? They never gave her any money back for doing less miles. But do you know what else they did? There was a little mark on the sill where she got out with the high heels. And the person from BCA who came to pick it up went round the car. And he says, there's a scratch on the sill there. Well, it wasn't a scratch, it was rubber. It was a rubber mark, which would just wipe off. But you see, that's what they do. So any scratches, any chips, they charge you for them as well. Any dings, yeah, that. So at the end of the term, you get a bill for excess mileage, any chips, any alloy wheel marks, anything over and above normal wear and tear, you get a bill for. How are excess mileage charges calculated? Charges for exceeding your agreed upon mileage are calculated on a pence per mile basis based on the following factors: your pre-agreed mileage, the manufacturer and model of the car, who your finance provider is, the total number of miles on the vehicle when it is returned. Often the cost per mile is around 10p. This can be as little as 5p or as much as 30p, depending on the factors above. Now, 30p a mile, excess charge, that's 10 times the 3p a mile EVED tax. You're seriously telling me that the person who's going to pay 30 pence a mile over and above his lease because he's gone over the mileage, you're telling me he's not going to clock that for 30p, but he's going to clock it to get out the VED at 3p. You are out your tiny mind, mate. Unbelievable. Not only that, but this has been going on for years. And you know what else? Nobody's interested in it. Nobody at all cares. The leasing companies don't give a shit. The garages don't give a shit. Seemingly, it's only me that does. Oh, Baz, you can't say that. Well, actually, I can, because I've had experience with this, with two of the biggest firms. Two of them. Telling them that a vehicle had been clocked with absolute proof that it had been clocked. Do you know what else? When you plug a diagnostic machine in, it tells you the mileage reading now off the ECU. It gives you the exact mileage off the ECU. Whatever it says on the clock, because you can hire these mileage correction services, clockers. You can hire them to come and make your clock read whatever you want. So how about this? If somebody was that way inclined to get the car clock for the 3p a mile, say they were getting a lease over 3 years, say they were doing 20,000 miles a year. What if they say put 30,000 in and then just got it clocked? 30,000 times 30 pence, 9,000 quid. They'd have to pay £9,000 in excess mileage charges. So you're telling me they won't clock it to save 9,000 quid, but they clock it to save £900 fuel duty. There is no danger at all whatsoever that people are going to clock the vehicles to save 3 pence a mile if they haven't already been clocking it to save from 10p to 30p, or as it says here, as little as 5p. It's always been more than the fuel duty. Why would somebody all of a sudden start clocking it now? Ridiculous story. It's a non-story. It's just another way of muddying the waters for EVs and trying to get out of EV owners paying what they should do when they should do. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.